You know, people always say that blood is thicker than water. That family comes first, no matter what. I believed that my whole life, right up until the day my own son looked me in the eye and told me I was a burden they could no longer carry. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that sometimes life saves its best surprises for last. And when those surprises come, they change everything. Comment below where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. My name is Eleanor. I'm 72 years old, and until recently, I thought my story was over. Turns out, it was just beginning. For 43 years, I lived in the same house in Beacon Hill, just outside of Boston. A beautiful Victorian that my late husband Thomas and I bought when we were newlyweds. Every creaking floorboard, every patch of faded wallpaper held memories. Thomas passed 3 years ago from a stroke, sudden and merciless. One morning he was making his famous blueberry pancakes, the next he was gone. The house felt enormous without him. Every room echoed with his absence. That's when my son David suggested I move in with him and his wife Jennifer. It makes sense, Mom, he said. We have the space, and you shouldn't be alone. Jennifer smiled and nodded, but I caught the tightness around her eyes. Still, I was grateful. I sold my beloved house and moved into their modern colonial in Newton. At first, everything seemed fine. I had my own room upstairs, helped with cooking, tried to be useful without getting in the way. But slowly, I began to feel the shift. Jennifer would purse her lips when I'd suggest a different recipe. David would cut me off mid-sentence when I'd start telling stories about his childhood. I felt myself becoming smaller, quieter, more invisible with each passing day. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in November. I was setting the table for dinner when David walked in from work, his face stormy. Jennifer was already seated, scrolling through her phone with that familiar look of irritation. Mom, we need to talk, David said, not even bothering to remove his coat. I set down the last fork carefully. Of course, dear. What about? This arrangement isn't working, he said bluntly. Jennifer's been patient, but we need our space back. We've found you a nice assisted living facility, Sunny Acres. You'll have friends there, activities, ... The words hit me like physical blows. I looked at Jennifer, hoping for some support, some contradiction. She wouldn't meet my eyes. David, I whispered, I don't need assisted living. I'm perfectly capable. Are you? Jennifer finally spoke up, her voice sharp. Because honestly, Eleanor, you've been here 8 months, and it feels like we can't breathe in our own home. Every meal has to be discussed, every TV show negotiated. We're newlyweds trying to build our life together. You've been married for 6 years, I said quietly. That's not the point, David snapped. The point is, this was supposed to be temporary, and it's become permanent. We've already put down a deposit at Sunny Acres. You move in next month. I stared at my son, this man I had carried for 9 months, raised through scraped knees and broken hearts, put through college while working 2 jobs after his father lost his business. This man who was now discarding me like an outdated appliance. I see, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Well then, I suppose I should start packing. That night, I sat in my room, their guest room. I corrected myself and wept. Not the dramatic sobbing of movies, but the quiet, bone-deep crying of someone whose heart has been broken by the people who were supposed to love them most. The next morning, I began making calls. First to Sunny Acres, to decline their services, then to a real estate agent. If I was going to be alone, I'd be alone on my own terms. I found a small apartment in Cambridge, near Harvard Square. Nothing fancy, but it had character and, more importantly, it was mine. I moved out while David and Jennifer were at work, leaving only a note. Thank you for opening your home to me. I've found somewhere that better suits my needs. Love always, Mom. David called that evening, furious. Mom, what the hell? You can't just move out without telling us. We had plans. We were trying to help you. You were trying to warehouse me, I replied calmly. There's a difference. The calls became less frequent after that. A text on my birthday. A generic Christmas card. I sent them updates about my life, the book club I'd joined, the cooking class, the volunteer work at the literacy center. They rarely responded. Loneliness is a peculiar thing. It doesn't hit you all at once like grief. It seeps in slowly, fills up all the empty spaces until you realize you haven't had a real conversation with another human being in days. I began talking to cashiers at the grocery store just to hear my own voice. One particularly difficult evening, about 6 months after moving to Cambridge, I was going through a box of old photographs when I found something I'd forgotten I had. My mother's jewelry box. Inside, tucked beneath her pearl necklace, was an envelope I'd never noticed before. My name was written on it in her careful script. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter, dated just a month before she passed away 15 years ago. My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you've finally found what I could never bring myself to give you while I was alive. I was not a perfect mother, and I kept secrets I shouldn't have. The truth is, your father was not the man I married. Your real father was someone I could never acknowledge publicly, but who provided for you in ways you never knew. Behind this letter, you'll find a key to a safety deposit box at First National Bank in Boston. Box 247. I pray you'll forgive an old woman her secrets and understand that everything I did was out of love. I must have read that letter a dozen times before the words truly sank in. The next morning, I took the T into Boston and found the bank. The safety deposit box hadn't been touched in 15 years. The fees automatically deducted from an account I'd never known existed. Inside the box were documents that would change my life forever. Birth certificates, legal papers, and a trust fund established by someone named William Ashworth, a name I recognized from the society pages of the Globe. He'd been a prominent businessman, a philanthropist, a married man with children of his own, and apparently, my biological father. The trust had been growing for over 7 decades. The amount made me dizzy. $2.3 million, plus ownership of several properties around Boston, including my heart nearly stopped the building where David and Jennifer had their law offices. I sat in that sterile bank room, surrounded by documents that proved I was not who I thought I was, and laughed. Actually laughed out loud until the bank manager knocked on the door to make sure I was all right. I'm fine, I told him, wiping tears from my eyes. I'm better than fine. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings with lawyers and financial advisors. William Ashworth, it turned out, had been very thorough. The trust included detailed instructions. The money was to be released to me on my 70th birthday, or in the event of my mother's death, whichever came later. Since I was already 72, it was all mine, free and clear. But the most interesting discovery came when I reviewed the property holdings. Ashworth had been buying real estate in Boston for decades, all held in trust. The building that housed David and Jennifer's law firm was one of them. They'd been paying rent to my trust fund for the past 4 years without knowing it. I couldn't resist doing a little digging. Their lease was up for renewal in 3 months, and according to the property manager, they'd been difficult tenants. Late payments, complaints about maintenance, demands for improvements they refused to pay for. David, it seemed, was just as entitled in business as he was in family matters. That's when I decided to pay them a visit. I dressed carefully that morning. A new navy suit, my mother's pearls, my silver hair styled at the salon. I looked every inch the successful businesswoman I had suddenly become. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt like ascending to a different world. Their office was smaller than I'd expected, cramped and cluttered. Jennifer sat at the reception desk, looking frazzled as she juggled phone calls and paperwork. She barely glanced up when I walked in. "Can I help you?" she asked distractedly. "I'd like to speak with David Walsh, please, about the lease renewal." That got her attention. She looked up, squinted, and her face went pale. "Eleanor, what are you doing here?" Before I could answer, David emerged from his office, carrying a stack of files. He stopped dead when he saw me. "Mom, what's this about a lease?" I smiled pleasantly. "Hello, David. Jennifer, you both look well. I'm here as a representative of Ashworth Holdings, the company that owns this building. The files slipped from David's hands, papers scattering across the floor. Jennifer's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I don't understand, David stammered. It's quite simple, I said, taking a seat without being invited. I'm here to discuss your lease renewal. Or rather, to inform you that it won't be renewed. You can't be serious. Jennifer finally found her voice. You don't own this building. This is some kind of joke. I reached into my purse and pulled out the legal documents. I assure you, it's no joke. I inherited a rather substantial trust fund, which includes this building and several others. Your lease expires at the end of the month, and based on your history of late payments and complaints, we've decided not to renew. David sank into a chair, his face ashen. Mom, you can't do this. Our whole practice is here. Our clients, our reputation. You'll have 30 days to relocate, I continued, ignoring his pleading tone. Of course, if you're interested in staying, we could discuss new terms. The rent would be market rate, which is approximately 3 times what you're currently paying, plus a security deposit and first and last month's rent up front. This is insane, Jennifer snapped. You're doing this to get back at us for the assisted living thing. We were trying to help you. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. Jennifer, dear, everything I'm doing is perfectly legal and entirely business related. The fact that you're my son's wife is irrelevant to the property management company. I paused at the door. Oh, and David, you might want to call me Mrs. Ashworth from now on. Eleanor is what family calls me. The door closed behind me with a satisfying click. Over the next month, I watched from a distance as David and Jennifer scrambled to find new office space. The real estate market in Boston was tight, and what they could afford was either too small or in neighborhoods that wouldn't impress their clients. They managed to find a space in a converted warehouse in Somerville, half the size of their previous office and twice as expensive. I should have felt triumphant, but mostly I felt empty. Yes, I'd proven a point, but I'd also deepened the rift between us. David left angry voicemails, accusing me of being vindictive and cruel. Jennifer sent long emails about how disappointed she was in my behavior. Neither of them seemed to understand that their own actions had consequences. The loneliness crept back in, deeper than before. Having money didn't fill the silence in my apartment, or make the holidays less painful. I threw myself into charitable work, donated generously to causes I believed in, traveled to places I'd always wanted to see, but at the end of each day, I was still alone. That's when I met Ruby. She was in her 80s, a former jazz singer who'd moved into the apartment next to mine. Ruby had a laugh that could fill a room, and a way of seeing through people's facades that was both terrifying and comforting. "You're that woman with the law firm drama," she said one day, cornering me by the mailboxes. "Heard about it from Mrs. Peterson in 3B. Her nephew works in real estate." I bristled. "I don't know what you mean." "Honey," Ruby chuckled, "in a building this size, everybody knows everybody's business. Question is, are you done punishing your boy, or are you planning to take this to the grave?" "He hurt me," I said quietly. "Course he did. Kids always hurt their parents. It's part of growing up, learning to be human. But you taught him how to do it." "Excuse me." Ruby leaned against the wall, studying me with those sharp eyes. "You raised a boy who thought he could make decisions for other people without asking them first. Where do you think he learned that?" The words stung because they contained a grain of truth I didn't want to acknowledge. How many times had I made decisions for David when he was young, convinced I knew what was best? How many times had I steamrolled over his preferences because I was the parent and he was the child? "The difference is," Ruby continued, "you did it out of love. He did it out of convenience. But maybe it's time you both learned a different way." That conversation haunted me for weeks. I found myself thinking about all the moments when I could have handled things differently. All the times I could have taught David to ask, instead of assume, to include instead of exclude. The breakthrough came at Christmas. I was spending the holiday alone, had turned down invitations from acquaintances, because I wasn't in the mood for forced cheerfulness. I was reading by the fire when there was a knock at my door. David stood in the hallway, looking older than his 34 years. He was alone. "Jennifer's at her sister's," he said without preamble. "We've been having problems. Turns out stress makes people say things they don't mean and do things they regret." I stepped aside to let him in. We sat in awkward silence for several minutes before he spoke again. "I found some of Dad's old letters last week. Letters he wrote to you before they were married. He talked about your mother, about how she sacrificed everything for you after your father left." David's voice was quiet. "Except your father didn't leave, did he?" I met his eyes. "No, he couldn't stay. The trust fund, the buildings, it all makes sense now." He paused. "Mom, I'm sorry. Not just for the office thing, but for all of it. For making you feel unwanted. For forgetting that you spent your whole life putting us first." The apology I'd dreamed of hearing didn't feel the way I'd imagined. Instead of vindication, I felt sadness for all the time we'd lost. "I'm sorry too," I said. "For the way I handled the office situation. I was hurt, and I wanted you to feel what I felt. That wasn't fair." Actually, David smiled ruefully. "It was probably exactly what I needed. The new office is better for our practice. Cheaper rent means we can take on more pro bono cases. And Jennifer and I, well, we realized we weren't ready to have you live with us. But that doesn't mean we don't want you in our lives." We talked until dawn, really talked, maybe for the first time since he'd been a child. I told him about the loneliness, about feeling invisible and disposable. He told me about the pressure he'd felt to have his life perfectly figured out. About how Jennifer resented any reminder that they weren't the only family that mattered. "I want to try again," he said as the sun began to rise. "All of us. But differently this time, like equals instead of parent and child." It wasn't a magic fix. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal overnight. But we began building something new. Sunday dinners at restaurants instead of forced family gatherings. Phone calls where we actually listened to each other. Jennifer and I slowly found our way to a friendship based on mutual respect rather than obligation. I kept most of the inheritance, using it to fund scholarships for older women returning to school and to support programs for isolated seniors. But I also did something that surprised everyone, including myself. I bought a house. Not a big one, but one with a guest room and a garden. A place where family could visit but where I would always be the one in control of my own space. David helped me move in. As we carried boxes from the truck, he paused to read a framed quote I'd hung by the front door. "The best revenge is a life well lived." "Is that what this was?" he asked. "Revenge?" I considered the question seriously. "No," I said finally. "It was education. For both of us." The housewarming party was small but meaningful. Ruby came, of course, regaling everyone with stories of her singing days that may or may not have been true. A few neighbors from my old building in Cambridge, some friends from my volunteer work. David and Jennifer brought a bottle of wine and a genuine smile. As the evening wound down and the last guests departed, I stood on my front porch, looking out at the garden I was planning to plant in the spring. For the first time in years, I felt truly at peace. That night, I wrote in the journal I'd started keeping. Today, I learned that sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the chance to see who they really are. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they return the favor. I'm 72 years old, and I'm just beginning to understand who I am when I'm not defined by my relationships to other people. I'm not just David's mother, or Thomas's widow, or William Ashworth's daughter. I'm Eleanor, and that's enough. The money gave me options I never had before, but it was the courage to use my voice that really set me free. I spent so many years being the person everyone else needed me to be that I forgot there was someone inside worth knowing. These days, David and I have lunch once a week. We talk about books, politics, his work, my travels. Jennifer has started joining us sometimes, and I'm learning to appreciate her sharp wit and fierce loyalty to my son. We're not the family I once thought we were, but we're the family we chose to become. Last month, David asked me for advice about something at work. Not financial advice, He knows I'm comfortable now, but personal advice. He valued my opinion, my experience, my wisdom. It was the first time in years that I felt truly seen by him. Ruby was right, as she usually is. Children hurt their parents as part of learning to be human. But parents can hurt their children too, by trying to shield them from the consequences of their choices. Sometimes love means stepping back and letting people find their own way, even when it's painful to watch. I've learned that there's a difference between being abandoned and being free. For too long, I confused the two. Now I know that freedom isn't something someone gives you, it's something you take for yourself. People ask me if I'm angry about the years I lost, the time when I felt small and invisible and unwanted. The truth is, I'm grateful for those years. They taught me what I was worth and gave me the strength to demand it. My mother kept secrets her whole life, carried shame that wasn't hers to bear. I won't make that mistake. I tell my story now, to anyone who'll listen. Not because I want pity or praise, but because I want other people to know that it's never too late to reclaim your life. The inheritance was a gift, but not because of the money. It was a gift because it gave me the power to choose how I wanted to be treated, where I wanted to live, who I wanted to spend my time with. Money doesn't solve every problem, but it certainly provides options. And sometimes, all you need is one option to change everything. I've started dating, if you can believe that. A lovely gentleman named Frank who I met at the library. He's a retired teacher, a widower like me, and he thinks my stories are fascinating rather than scandalous. We take long walks, go to museums, debate the merits of various novels over coffee. It's nice to have companionship that's chosen rather than obligated. David was surprised at first, then pleased. "I'm happy you're happy, Mom," he said, and I could tell he meant it. Jennifer even helped me pick out a dress for my first real date in 50 years. The building that once housed their law office has new tenants, now a nonprofit organization that provides legal services to low-income families. The irony isn't lost on me, and I like to think William Ashworth would approve. His money is still doing good in the world, just not in the way he originally intended. I think about him sometimes, this man who was my father, but never got to know me. The letters in the safety deposit box painted a picture of someone who was trapped by the expectations of his time, unable to acknowledge a daughter born outside of marriage. I feel sorry for him, for all the moments we never shared. But I'm also grateful for the final gift he gave me, the gift of independence. These days, my apartment in Cambridge feels like home. I've decorated it with things that bring me joy, rather than things that bring back memories. Fresh flowers every week, books stacked on every surface, photographs of my travels and new adventures rather than old sorrows. I volunteer at a program that helps older adults learn to use computers and navigate the internet. It's rewarding to watch someone my age discover they can video chat with grandchildren or order groceries online. There's something powerful about learning new things when everyone expects you to be winding down. Last week, a woman in her 60s came to class, recently divorced and terrified of being alone for the first time in 40 years. I saw myself in her eyes, that mixture of fear and possibility that comes when you're forced to reinvent yourself later in life. "I don't know how to be on my own," she whispered to me during a break. "Neither did I told her. But you know what I discovered? Being alone and being lonely aren't the same thing. And sometimes, being alone is exactly what you need to figure out who you really are." She smiled through her tears, and I remembered Ruby's words. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the chance to see who they really are. That's what I try to do now, in my volunteer work, in my relationships, in my daily life. I try to see people as they are, not as I need them to be. And I try to show up as myself, not as who I think others want me to be. It's taken me 7 decades to learn this lesson, but better late than never. As my mother used to say, better late than never. As I sit here now, telling you this story, I realize that this isn't really a story about revenge, or even about family. It's a story about finding your voice when everyone expects you to stay quiet. It's about claiming your space in the world, especially when others try to make you smaller. I used to think that being a good mother meant sacrificing everything for my child. Now I know that being a good mother means modeling how to live with dignity and self-respect. David needed to see that there were consequences for treating people badly, even people who love you unconditionally. The inheritance gave me the means to teach that lesson, but the real power came from finally believing I deserved better treatment. The real power came from finally believing I was worth something. Money can't buy you love or respect or happiness, but it can buy you choices. And sometimes, having choices is all you need to transform your life. So to anyone listening who feels invisible, who feels discarded, who feels like their story is over, I want you to know that it's not. Your story doesn't end when others stop paying attention to you. Your story ends when you stop paying attention to yourself. Don't wait for someone else to value you. Don't wait for someone else to see your worth. Don't wait for someone else to invite you to take up space in the world. Take it anyway. You deserve it. And who knows? Life might just have one more surprise waiting for you. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you're never too old to start over, never too late to demand better, and never too proud to forgive both others and yourself. Don't forget to subscribe if my story resonated with you, and please share your own stories in the comments. We all need to remember that we're not alone in this journey, and that sometimes the best chapters of our lives are the ones we write when everyone thinks the book is finished. Until next time, remember, you are enough, exactly as you are.